On March 14, 1853, a transaction occurred in a parish courthouse along Louisiana's Mississippi River corridor, one that would be deliberately omitted from official auction records for over a century. For the price of a loaf of bread, not $12, but 12 cents, a pregnant woman was sold. Court documents show the sale was legal, witnessed by 7 men whose signatures are still visible on the deed. Yet, the woman's name was never recorded in any parish registry, not before that day or after. Local historians discovered the receipt in 1897, sealed inside a wall during renovations, and immediately sequestered it. Written on the back of that receipt was something that made them choose silence over truth. Tonight, we reveal what was hidden and why the descendants of those 7 witnesses spent generations trying to ensure this story died with them. But before we continue with the events in that Louisiana courthouse, I need you to do something. Subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell, because stories like this one, stories they tried to bury, need to be told. And I'm curious, where are you listening from right now? Let me know your state or city in the comments. Let's see how far these hidden histories reach. The transaction on that March morning was not some anomaly born of chaos. It was deliberate, calculated, and entirely legal under the laws governing Louisiana before the Civil War tore the nation apart. In 1853, St. Helena Parish was a place where Spanish moss hung so thick from the live oaks that daylight struggled to reach the ground. The air tasted of river silt and sugar cane smoke, and the wealth of the land was measured not in acres, but in human beings. The parish sat in the Fertile Crescent between Baton Rouge and the Mississippi border, close enough to the river to prosper, yet remote enough to keep its secrets. Greensburg, the parish seat, was a collection of whitewashed buildings around a courthouse square where business was conducted with the formality of a church service. Every Saturday, the courthouse steps became an auction block. Furniture, livestock, land, and people changed hands with equal bureaucratic efficiency. The auctioneers knew their business, the buyers knew their limits, and everyone understood that what happened on those steps was sanctioned by law, blessed by custom, and enforced by men who believed themselves to be the architects of civilization. That spring, 3 men held particular power in St. Helena Parish. Presiding over the district court with the authority of Scripture was Judge Amos Crenshaw. At 62, he had spent 4 decades interpreting laws written to protect property above all else. His decisions shaped the parish like a river shapes its banks, slowly, inevitably, with a force that seemed like nature itself. Below him in influence, but equal in ambition, was Duncan Fairholme, a plantation owner whose family had controlled over 4,000 acres of prime cotton land since Louisiana became a state. Educated in Charleston, fluent in French, and ruthless in business, Fairholme was 47. His plantation, Belmont, employed an overseer named Silas Guthrie, a man whose reputation for cruelty kept the enslaved population compliant through fear alone. The third man in this trinity of power was Nathaniel Pute, the parish tax assessor and recorder of deeds. At 39, Pute was younger, hungry for status in a society where family name meant everything and his meant nothing. He had arrived from Virginia with forged letters of introduction, understanding that in the chaos of westward expansion, a man could reinvent himself if he was willing to do what others would not. These 3 men intersected on the morning of March 14 because of a woman whose existence had been carefully erased from every record they controlled. Her name was Clara. She had been born on a Virginia tobacco plantation approximately 23 years earlier. The word approximately matters here, as enslaved people were often denied the dignity of recorded birth dates. At age 15, she was sold south, separated from her mother and siblings in a Richmond auction house on a Tuesday morning in late summer. The purchaser was Edmund Fairholme, Duncan's father, who died of cholera in 1849, leaving his entire estate, including 47 human beings, to his son. Clara worked in Belmont's main house. She was clever with numbers, could read despite laws forbidding it, and possessed a quiet dignity that Duncan Fairholme first noticed, then resented, then sought to destroy. In October of 1852, Clara became pregnant. She never spoke the father's name aloud. She didn't need to. The enslaved women knew. Duncan's wife, Margaret, knew. And Duncan knew with a certainty that filled him with a rage so potent he could barely look at Clara without his hands shaking. Because the father was not him, it was his younger brother, William. William Fairholme was everything Duncan was not. Where Duncan was severe, William laughed easily. Where Duncan saw human beings as agricultural investments, William saw the fundamental evil of the system he benefited from, yet lacked the courage to oppose it. He was 28, unmarried, living in the overseer's cottage, ostensibly managing the northern fields but mostly drinking and reading abolitionist literature smuggled from New Orleans. His relationship with Clara began as conversation. She brought meals to the cottage. He asked about her life before Belmont. She answered cautiously, then with increasing honesty as she realized he listened differently. Over months, conversation became something else, something that crossed every boundary their world had constructed. When Clara's pregnancy began to show in late December, William did something unprecedented. He went to his brother and offered to purchase Clara's freedom. The conversation happened in Duncan's study on a Saturday evening. No record exists of what was said, but what happened next was documented with meticulous precision. Duncan refused the offer, more than refused, he was insulted by it. In his view, William had violated the sanctity of property rights, endangered the racial hierarchy their society depended on, and embarrassed the Fairholme name in a way that could destroy their standing if it became public. William argued that he loved Clara, that the child was his, that they should be allowed to go north to a free state. Duncan's response was to immediately sell Clara. But not to a trader who would take her far away, that would be too simple, too merciful. Duncan wanted his brother to watch, to witness the consequences of what he called his betrayal. He arranged for Clara to be included in a public auction on March 14, a routine sale of property seized for unpaid debts. On the courthouse steps, in full public view, entirely legal. Yet Duncan added a condition that revealed the depth of his cruelty. He set Clara's minimum bid at 12 cents. The amount was deliberate. In 1853, the average price for an enslaved woman of childbearing age was between $800 and $1,200. By setting the price at 12 cents, Duncan demonstrated that Clara had no value to him, humiliated William by showing the woman he loved was worth less than a newspaper, and, most cunningly, ensured no legitimate buyer would bid. A woman offered for 12 cents must be damaged, diseased, unsuitable. No plantation owner would risk even a minimal investment on such obvious refuse. Duncan knew only one person would bid. His plan was not to sell Clara to a stranger, but to someone who would ensure her suffering continued under circumstances William could not prevent. He was selling her to his overseer, Silas Guthrie. The night before the auction, William Fairholme disappeared. He left no note, took no horse, simply walked away from Belmont after midnight and was never seen in St. Helena Parish again. Some said he went north to join abolitionists in Boston. Others claimed he drowned himself in the Mississippi. A few whispered that Duncan had him killed and buried in the cane fields. The truth was simpler and more disturbing. William had gone to Judge Crenshaw's home before dawn and offered everything he owned, $3,000 in inheritance and land rights, for a single favor. He wanted the judge to invalidate the sale. Judge Crenshaw listened to William's plea with the expression of a man watching a child explain why the sky should be green. When William finished, the judge asked a single question: "Did your brother sign the proper deed of sale?" William admitted he had. "Then the transaction is legal," Crenshaw said. "Your grief does not supersede property law. Good evening, Mr. Fairholme." William left understanding that every institution, every powerful man in the parish, would side with Duncan. Not necessarily from cruelty, but because allowing William's sentiment to override property rights would threaten the entire foundation of their economy. If love could supersede ownership, the system would collapse. Clara spent her last night at Belmont in the quarters, surrounded by women who braided her hair and sang songs older than Louisiana, older than America, songs carried from Africa in the bellies of ships. They knew they would likely never see her again. They knew what men like Silas Guthrie did to women they owned. An elderly cook named Bethy, who had survived 50 years of bondage, pressed a small cloth bundle into Clara's hands. Inside was a knife, barely longer than her palm, wrapped in oilcloth. "You hide this," Bethy whispered. "You hide it good. And when the time comes, you do what needs doing." Clara nodded. She understood. The knife was not for self-defense, it was for mercy. For her child, if things became unbearable; for herself, if there was no other escape. She sewed it into the hem of her dress that night, her fingers steady despite the fear that tasted like copper in her mouth. The auction began at 10 a.m. under skies so gray they seemed to mirror the moral character of everything below. About 40 people gathered. Most were there for livestock and furniture, a few came for the human merchandise. Nathaniel Pute stood on the courthouse steps, deed in hand, reading in a voice designed to carry. He described Clara with the same inflection used for a lame horse, female, age approximately 23 years. House-trained, literate, though such skill is of questionable value. Currently with child. Minimum bid, 12 cents. A murmur rippled through the crowd. 12 cents. Something was wrong. Several men lost interest. Why risk investment on defective property? Silas Guthrie stood near the front, hat pulled low, expression unreadable, waiting for the crowd to disperse, waiting to purchase Clara for a pittance. But something unexpected happened. A man near the back raised his hand. 12 cents, he called. Every head turned. The man was a stranger, tall and thin, wearing a traveler's coat dusty from the road. His face was weathered, but his bearing was wrong for a field hand. He stood too straight, looked people in the eye too directly. Nathaniel Pute hesitated. "You are bidding 12 cents for this property?" "I am." "Your name, sir?" "Isaiah Mercer." Pute glanced toward Silas Guthrie, who stared with genuine confusion. This was not part of the plan. "Do you have 12 cents, Mr. Mercer?" Isaiah Mercer approached, reached into his pocket, and placed 12 copper pennies on the podium. "I do." From near the courthouse door, Judge Crenshaw watched with increasing interest. He was there to ensure Duncan's plan proceeded smoothly, but now an unknown variable had entered. Pute looked desperately toward Silas Guthrie. The overseer's face reddened. If he bid, he'd reveal his interest. If he didn't, Clara would go to this stranger. The seconds stretched. Finally, Silas Guthrie spoke. 13 cents. Isaiah Mercer didn't hesitate. 25 cents. 50 cents. $1. The crowd was riveted. This was not typical. Two men bidding against each other for a woman being sold at refused prices. What did they know? Silas Guthrie bid $2. Isaiah Mercer bid $5. At $10, Guthrie stopped. Not from lack of funds, but because Duncan had instructed him not to overpay, not to draw attention. $10 once, Pute called, his voice uncertain. $10 twice. He looked toward Judge Crenshaw, who gave a small nod. Sold to Mr. Isaiah Mercer for $10. Clara, who had been standing to the side, hands bound, pregnancy visible beneath her thin dress, looked at the man who had purchased her. Isaiah Mercer met her gaze. Though his expression didn't change, Clara saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Recognition. The deed was signed within minutes. Mercer paid the $10 in coins, counting them carefully onto Pute's desk. Judge Crenshaw witnessed it. By law, Clara was now the property of a man she had never met. But the irregularity had attracted attention. As Mercer led Clara toward a wagon at the edge of the square, Duncan Fairholme emerged from the courthouse where he'd been watching through a window. "Mr. Mercer," Duncan called, his voice sharp. "A moment of your time." Isaiah Mercer stopped but didn't release Clara's arm. He turned, expression neutral. "Mr. Fairholme." You are not from this parish. I am not. What brings you to St. Helena? Business. Duncan stepped closer, trying to place this man. What sort of business? My own sort, Mercer replied, his voice quiet but firm. The transaction was legal. The judge witnessed it. Unless you have some objection to the sale. It was a challenge. If Duncan objected, he'd need grounds. What could he say? That he'd undervalued Clara to humiliate his brother. That he'd arranged for his overseer to purchase her. No objection, Duncan said slowly. Though I am curious. What do you intend with property you purchased for such a price? That is my business, Mr. Fairholme. Good day. Mercer turned and continued toward the wagon. Clara walked beside him, her mind racing. Nothing made sense. This man had bid against Silas Guthrie, paid $10 for a woman sold as refuse. And when she looked into his eyes, she saw something that terrified her more than anything in the past 4 months. He knew who she was. They reached the wagon, a simple farm cart with a canvas cover. Mercer helped her into the back, his touch impersonal but not rough. Then he climbed onto the driver's bench and urged the horse forward. They rode in silence through Greensburg, past storefronts and the white steeple church, past the boundary where cultivated land gave way to pine forest. Only when well beyond sight of the town did Isaiah Mercer speak. You don't remember me. Clara's voice was cautious. Should I? Richmond. August 1845. You were 15. I was there the day you were sold. Clara's blood went cold. You were at the auction. I was. I worked for a slave trader named Ephraim Dalton. I drove his wagons, managed his property. I watched you and your family stand on that block. I watched your mother scream when they separated you. I watched Edmund Fairholme pay $700 and lead you away. Then you are no different than the rest of them, Clara said, her voice hard. I was no different, Mercer corrected. I am no longer that man. He reached into his coat, withdrew a folded paper, and handed it back to her. Read it. Clara unfolded it with shaking hands. It was a deed of manumission. The name on the document was hers. At the bottom, unsigned, was a space for the owner's signature. Isaiah Mercer's signature. I don't understand, Clara whispered. 8 years ago, I watched your family destroyed, Mercer said, his voice steady, with something beneath it, shame or grief. I told myself I was just doing a job, that I wasn't responsible for the system. Then one night in New Orleans, I watched Ephraim Dalton beat a man to death over $5. Slowly. I realized every person who participates, no matter how small their role, makes the machine function. So I left. I went north. I worked with people trying to dismantle what I helped build. He paused, navigating around a fallen branch. 3 months ago, a man came to a meeting in Cincinnati. His name was William Fairholme. He told us about a woman in Louisiana carrying his child. He said his brother was going to sell her to a brutal overseer. He gave us the date and location. He asked if anyone could help. Clara's hand moved to her stomach. William sent you. He paid me, Mercer said. Not to purchase you. He paid me to bring you north to a safe house in Illinois. To a place where you and your child can be free. Clara stared at the deed. Freedom. The word felt foreign, impossible. Where is William now? Mercer's silence answered first. He died 2 weeks ago. Fever, they said. He was in Kentucky, trying to arrange passage for others. The people I work with, they think it might not have been fever. They think someone from Louisiana tracked him down. Clara closed her eyes. Duncan had him killed. We can't prove it. But yes, I believe that. Just when we think the worst is behind us, when it seems Clara might find freedom, the true horror of St. Helena Parish is about to reveal itself. If this story is giving you chills, share this video with a friend who loves dark mysteries. Hit that like button to support our content, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Let's discover together what happens next. The wagon continued north through the afternoon on increasingly rough roads. Mercer explained their route: avoid main roads, travel at night, rely on a network of safe houses. It would take weeks to reach Illinois. But something was wrong. Clara's instincts, honed by years of survival, told her Isaiah Mercer was lying. Not about everything, but something about this rescue felt staged, as if he was following a script. She thought about the auction, his perfectly timed arrival, how easily he outmaneuvered Silas Guthrie. Too easy. Duncan Fairholm didn't make mistakes. If he wanted Clara to go to Guthrie, she would have. Unless Duncan wanted something else to happen. The realization settled over her like ice water. This wasn't a rescue. This was a hunt. They camped that night in a forest clearing. Mercer built a small fire and offered dried meat and cornbread. Clara ate mechanically, her mind working. If Duncan wanted her dead, he could have had her killed at Belmont. But he didn't want her dead, he wanted William destroyed completely. With William gone, he needed something else. He needed proof that William's betrayal had consequences. He needed the child she carried to suffer, and for it to be William's fault. The escape was designed to fail. Mercer wasn't rescuing her, he was delivering her to something worse. Somewhere along the route, they would be intercepted by slave catchers. Clara would be returned under circumstances that made her fate seem like justice. Duncan could say William's sentiment had made things worse. It was perfect revenge. The only question was when the trap would spring. Clara waited until Mercer's breathing deepened, then retrieved the knife from her hem. She could kill him now. But then what? She was pregnant, alone in the forest. The knife wasn't the answer. Maybe honesty was. I know this isn't real, Clara said quietly. Mercer didn't move for a moment, then pushed his hat back. Explain. Duncan planned this. He wanted me to try to escape. He wanted it to fail. You are part of that plan. Mercer's expression didn't change. Why would I agree? Money. Or safety. Maybe he threatened to expose you for helping runaways. I don't know why, but I know this isn't what you told me. The fire crackled. An owl called in the darkness. You are smarter than William gave you credit for, Mercer finally said. So I am right? Partially. Yes, Duncan knows. Yes, he planned for it to fail. But you're wrong about why I'm helping him. Then why? Because if I didn't, someone else would. Someone who would deliver you directly to slave catchers who would hurt you in ways I won't describe. Duncan gave me a choice: lead you north and let his men intercept us in a way that leaves you unharmed, or refuse and watch him give the job to men who would make you wish you'd never been born. Clara laughed bitterly. So you chose the merciful betrayal. I chose to give you a chance. What chance? You just said we'll be intercepted. We will. Tomorrow afternoon, 20 miles north. 4 men will be waiting with papers declaring you a fugitive, with authorization from Judge Crenshaw to return you to Belmont. Legally, they'll be within their rights. Then I have no chance. You have exactly one chance, Mercer said. He tossed a leather pouch across the fire to her. There's $150 there. And a letter of introduction to a family in Natchez, free people of color who can help you disappear. Not north, where Duncan expects you to run, but south. To New Orleans, then by ship to Mexico. It's longer, more dangerous, but possible. Clara opened the pouch. The money was real. The letter was real. Why would you do this? Because I meant what I said earlier. I'm not the man I was in Richmond. And because William Fairholme, whatever his faults, tried to do something decent. I won't let Duncan turn that decency into a weapon. But you're still going to betray me. They are going to intercept someone, Mercer corrected. It doesn't have to be you. He stood and walked to the wagon, returning with a bundle of clothing, a dress similar to hers, a shawl, a bonnet. There's a settlement 8 miles south. A woman there named Ruth Chambers. She's your height, your complexion, and she's dying. Consumption. She has weeks left. I spoke with her yesterday. I paid her family $50 to help us. Clara stared. I don't understand. Tomorrow morning, you take this money and these clothes. You walk south. The Chambers family will hide you until the men have passed. Then they'll help you get to Natchez. From there, you follow the letter's instructions. And you, he gestured to the clothes, Ruth Chambers will take your place. She's too ill to walk, but she can sit upright. From a distance, she'll look enough like you. When Duncan's men intercept us, they'll take her. By the time they realize their mistake, you'll be gone. Clara's mind reeled. Ruth will die. Ruth is already dying. Her family needs money to bury her, to care for her children. This way, her death serves a purpose. This is insane. This is your only chance, Mercer said flatly. Duncan has men watching every route north. He has money, power, and the law. You can't fight him directly. You can only disappear so completely that he can't find you. Clara looked at the knife, the money, then at Mercer. If I run, Duncan will know you helped me. He'll come after you. He will try, Mercer agreed. But I'm harder to catch than you are. I have friends who can make me disappear, too. Why? Clara asked, her voice broken. Why risk this for me? Mercer was quiet. When he spoke, his voice was softer. In Richmond, when they separated you from your mother, you didn't scream. You didn't fight. You stood on that block and looked at the men bidding on you with an expression that said you knew exactly who they were. You were 15 and had more dignity than any of them would ever possess. I've seen that expression in my dreams for 8 years. It's time I did something to earn the right to forget it. Clara felt tears burn but refused them. Crying was a luxury she couldn't afford. There's something else you should know, Mercer continued, his voice low. About Duncan Fairholme. William told us things before he died. You weren't the first. Clara's blood went cold. The first what? The first woman Duncan sold to Silas Guthrie. There were 3 others over the past 5 years. All house servants, all young. Duncan would arrange some minor infraction, then sell them to Guthrie at auction. Always for low prices. Always legally documented. Always witnessed by Judge Crenshaw. What happened to them? 2 died within a year. One from accidental injuries, the other from fever, though the enslaved people said she'd been beaten badly. The third, Sarah, disappeared. Guthrie claimed she ran away. No one saw her again. Clara thought of Bethy, the cook who'd given her the knife. Bethy would have known. Why? Because he could, Mercer said simply. The law gave him absolute power. Absolute power reveals what men truly are. Duncan enjoys the suffering of others, especially women who show intelligence or dignity. And Judge Crenshaw allowed it. He never questioned the pattern. He just signed the papers. William knew. He discovered it a year ago. Found records in Duncan's study. That's when he started reading abolitionist literature, believing the system itself was the problem. He tried to convince Duncan to free the enslaved people. Offered to forfeit his inheritance. Duncan laughed at him. Mercer fed a branch to the fire. When you became pregnant, William saw a chance to save one person. He contacted abolitionists, paid them everything, made arrangements. But Duncan found out. We think someone in Cincinnati betrayed us." By the time William realized the plan was compromised, it was too late. Duncan had restructured the auction. Then why did William go to Kentucky? He was trying to find another way. He thought if he could reach the Underground Railroad, he could arrange a secondary rescue. But Duncan found him first. His reach is long. 3 days after William started asking questions in Kentucky, he was dead. "The fever?" Clara asked. "What really happened?" "We'll never know for certain. His body was found in a Louisville boarding house. The proprietor said he'd been sick. But one of our people who saw the body said his fingernails were blue, his lips discolored. Signs of poisoning. Duncan killed his own brother. Or paid someone to. Either way, William became a problem Duncan eliminated. Clara absorbed this. A man so consumed by control he would murder his own blood. A system that gave such men power and called it civilization. "If Duncan could kill William," she said slowly, "he could kill you. I understand that. Then why risk it?" Mercer looked at her directly. "Because I'm tired of being the person who looks away. I'm tired of telling myself I'm just following orders. Every person who chooses their safety over someone else's suffering makes the system stronger. I can't dismantle slavery by myself. But I can save one person. I can do one thing that matters." It was the same logic that had motivated William. The same futile, beautiful logic that got idealistic people killed. But it was also the only logic that ever changed anything. Clara made her decision. "I'll go south. But I need to know something. The Chambers family. How did you find them?" "I've been traveling through Louisiana for 3 months, preparing. I made contacts, offered money to families willing to help. The Chambers were one of 3 who agreed." 3 families? You planned multiple routes? I planned for contingencies. Duncan isn't the only one who can think several moves ahead. Clara felt something shift. This stranger, who had participated in her family's destruction, had spent months preparing to save her, had risked his life to create options. Perhaps redemption wasn't a single gesture, but the slow work of becoming someone different. "What about Ruth?" Clara asked. "When they realize they have the wrong woman, what will they do to her?" "Nothing. She'll already be dying. By the time they discover the switch, she'll be unconscious or delirious. They can't torture someone that far gone, and they can't prove she willingly participated. For all anyone knows, I made an honest mistake. Duncan doesn't have to accept that, but he has to acknowledge he can't prove otherwise." Clara wasn't convinced, but she had no alternative. She thought of Ruth Chambers, a woman she'd never met, sacrificing her final days. It was a debt that could never be repaid. "I want to meet her," Clara said. "Before I leave. I want to thank her." "That's not wise. The less you know, the safer you both are." "I don't care about safe," Clara said, her voice hard. "A woman is dying for me. The least I can do is look her in the eye and tell her I won't waste what she's giving me." Mercer studied her, then nodded. "We'll stop at the settlement in the morning. You'll have 15 minutes. No more." They reached the settlement just after dawn. It was less a town than a collection of cabins around a common well, home to about 30 people, 3 black families and a few poor whites, a place that survived by being invisible. Ruth Chambers lived in the smallest cabin. Her husband had died in a logging accident, her 3 children were with neighbors while she spent her final days. The air inside smelled of sickness and sage. Ruth lay on a narrow bed, so thin her body barely raised the blanket. Her skin was gray, but her eyes were clear. "You are the one," Ruth whispered. "I am Clara. They told me you were worth saving. I wanted to see if that was true. I don't know if I'm worth what you're giving." "Nobody is worth a life," Ruth said. "That's not why I agreed. I agreed because my children need what Mr. Mercer paid. Because I'm dying anyway, and if I have to die, I'd rather it mean something. Your children, what will happen? My sister will take them. The money will feed them through the winter, maybe by a small plot of land. It's more than I could give them otherwise. Clara knelt, taking Ruth's bird-bone hand. I will remember you. I will tell my child about you. Your name will not be forgotten. Ruth smiled weakly. Names don't matter much where I'm going. But if it comforts you, remember. Just make sure you live. Make sure that baby lives. Don't let me trade my death for nothing. I will live, Clara promised. Whatever it takes. Good. Ruth's eyes fluttered closed. Now go. Mr. Mercer will tell you what to do. And don't look back. Looking back only makes the leaving harder. As Clara turned to leave, Ruth spoke again. One more thing. When they take me tomorrow, when they realize I'm not you, they'll be angry. They might threaten me, but they won't hurt me. I will make sure of that. How? Ruth opened her eyes, something fierce in them despite her weakness. Because I will already be dead. Clara froze. What do you mean? Mercer stepped forward. Ruth and I discussed this. The timing needs to be precise. If she dies during the interception, before they can question her, they have no leverage. They can't prove deception. They can only admit they failed. You're planning to die at exactly the right moment? Clara asked, incredulous. I'm planning to die on my own terms, Ruth corrected. Consumption will kill me in weeks anyway. This way, I choose when and how. This way, my death serves a purpose. Clara understood. Ruth had medicine, laudanum or morphine, and would take too much, timing her death to collapse Duncan's plan. It was brilliant and horrible. You've thought of everything, Clara whispered. No, Ruth said. Mr. Mercer thought of everything. I'm just agreeing. Now go, before I start coughing and ruin this dramatic moment. Clara wanted to say more, to explain she understood the magnitude of the debt. But Ruth's eyes had closed, her breathing labored. Mercer was at the door. So she left, walking out knowing she would never see Ruth again, knowing the woman on that bed would be dead in 2 days, having died to give her a chance. Outside, the sun was heating the air. Mercer handed Clara the pouch. There's a path behind this cabin. Follow it south for 3 miles to a road. Take it west to a tavern called the Black Swan. The owner, Marcus, will know what to do. Then follow the letter's instructions. Trust no one without the passwords. Move at night. Avoid main roads. Get to Natchez. Get on a ship. Get to Mexico. Disappear so completely that Duncan spends his life wondering what happened to you. Clara nodded, adjusting the bundle. What about you? I'll continue north with Ruth. I'll deliver her to Duncan's men, then disappear too. He'll hunt you. Let him try. I've been running my whole life. I'm good at it. Clara wanted to thank him, to say something profound. Words felt inadequate. Instead, she embraced him. Mercer stiffened, then slowly returned the embrace. Thank you, Clara whispered. Survive, Mercer replied. That's all the thanks I need. They separated. Clara turned toward the path. She did not look back. Looking back only made the leaving harder. Behind her, Isaiah Mercer watched until she disappeared into the trees. Then he returned to the cabin where Ruth Chambers lay dying, where a plan had been set in motion that would either save Clara's life or destroy everyone involved. The next 24 hours would determine which. Clara left before dawn. Mercer watched her go, then hitched the wagon. By sunrise, Ruth was in the back, wrapped in Clara's shawl, face hidden by the bonnet, a pregnancy pillow fashioned from rags around her waist. They traveled north. Ruth didn't speak, the consumption had taken her voice. She simply sat, swaying, breathing labored. Around 2 p.m., 4 men on horseback appeared. The leader, Porter, approached with papers. Isaiah Mercer. We have a warrant for the return of fugitive property, a Negro woman named Clara. We believe she's with you. I purchased that woman legally. I have the deed. The deed was obtained under false pretenses. Judge Crenshaw has voided it. The woman is to be returned. Porter moved to the wagon, pulling aside the canvas. Ruth looked up, her eyes fever-bright. This her? Porter asked. A companion rode closer. Hard to tell with the bonnet. Make her stand up. She's ill, Mercer said. I didn't ask. Make her stand. Mercer helped Ruth to her feet. She swayed. The pillow shifted. Porter's eyes narrowed. She looks wrong. Consumption. I was bringing her back south because she's too ill to travel north. Convenient. Porter grabbed Ruth's arm, pulling her. The bonnet fell back. Her face was gaunt, gray. Up close, the differences were obvious. This isn't her, Porter said slowly. I assure you, it is the woman I purchased. You're lying. Porter released Ruth so roughly she collapsed. Search everything. She's here somewhere. They tore the wagon apart. Found nothing. Where is she? Porter demanded. I don't know what you're talking about, Mercer said calmly. This is the woman I purchased. If she's not the one you're looking for, that's not my concern. Porter stepped forward. Duncan Fairholme will hear about this. I hope he does. Perhaps he'll explain why he's harassing law-abiding citizens. It was a stalemate. Porter knew he'd been outsmarted but couldn't prove it. One of his men, James Ridley, a former slave catcher, had been studying Ruth. We need to question her, he said. Porter crouched beside Ruth. Her eyes were unfocused, breathing shallow. Where is Clara? What did you do with her? Ruth's eyes focused with effort. And then, impossibly, she smiled. Gone, she whispered. Beyond your reach. Beyond Duncan Fairholme's reach. She is free. Where? I will never tell you. You can beat me, torture me, but I'll be dead before you get answers. I made sure of that. Porter understood. This woman had poisoned herself, turned her death into a weapon. You stupid woman, he said, his voice losing certainty. You think this helps? Duncan will find her. He always does. Maybe, Ruth agreed. Blood flowed from her mouth. Or maybe she'll disappear into a world where men like you have no power. Maybe she'll live to be old. Maybe her child will grow up free. Maybe your entire system will collapse and be remembered as a nightmare our descendants struggled to believe was real. Her breathing rattled. I die knowing I helped destroy something Duncan spent months building. What will you die knowing, Mr. Porter? That you hunted human beings for money? That you served a system designed to crush souls? That you chose cruelty when you could have chosen mercy? Ruth Chambers took one more breath. Then she died there in the road, with 4 slave catchers standing over her, with Isaiah Mercer watching, with the Louisiana sun beating down on a scene that would haunt James Ridley for the rest of his life. Porter stood over the body for a full minute. We bury her here, he finally said. We tell Duncan we intercepted the wagon, but the woman died before questioning. We tell him Mercer claims it was her, but we couldn't verify. We tell him the trail is cold. Duncan will know we failed, one man said. Duncan will know he was outmaneuvered, Porter corrected. But he won't be able to prove it. Without proof, there's nothing he can do. They buried Ruth Chambers in a shallow grave beside the road. No marker, no ceremony. Just another black body returning to Louisiana soil, one of thousands never mourned publicly. Isaiah Mercer watched without expression. When it was finished, he stood alone beside the disturbed earth. He didn't pray, but he spoke Ruth's name aloud 3 times, as if repetition could honor her. Then he continued north. As planned, he maintained the fiction, expressing confusion about her death. He filed a report with Judge Crenshaw, claiming the property was damaged in transit, requesting compensation. The report was denied. Judge Crenshaw ruled Mercer had purchased the property as is, and bore all risk. The 12-cent bid was evidence the seller knew the property was defective. No compensation would be issued. It was the perfect legal conclusion. Everyone had followed procedure. The law had functioned as designed, and yet Duncan Fairholme's revenge had been thwarted by a dying woman and a former slave trader seeking redemption. Years later, in 1868, James Ridley experienced a religious conversion and confessed to a Methodist minister, Reverend Thomas Hargrove. Among his sins was a detailed account of that March afternoon in 1853. He described Ruth's final words, the blood on her lips, the fierce intelligence in her dying eyes, how she smiled as life left her, secure in knowing she had broken Duncan's mechanism of cruelty. "I've captured over 200 fugitives," Ridley told the minister. "I've seen them beg, fight, pray. But I've never seen anyone choose death as deliberately as Ruth Chambers. She turned her last breath into an act of defiance. She died free, even though the law said she wasn't. That haunts me more than all the others combined." Reverend Hargrove wrote down the confession but never published it. It sat in his papers until his death in 1902, when his daughter Sarah discovered it. Horrified, she published it in 1903 in a small abolitionist journal. That publication is how we know Ruth Chambers chose her death deliberately, how we know she smiled as she died. Duncan Fairholme spent 6 months searching for Clara. He hired slave catchers, placed advertisements, offered rewards up to $2,000. He never found her. Judge Crenshaw died in 1861, just before Louisiana seceded, taking his knowledge to the grave. Duncan survived the war but lost everything. Bellamont was burned in 1863. He died in 1872 in a mobile boarding house, bankrupt and alone. Silas Guthrie was found dead in a ditch in 1854, face down in less than 6 inches of water. Official cause, accidental drowning. No charges. Nathaniel Pute fled Louisiana in 1863 ahead of Union forces. Never heard from again. The receipt found in 1897 contained more than the sale record. On the back, in William Fairholme's hand, was a message, "My name is William Fairholme. I tried to save a woman I loved from my brother's cruelty. I failed her as I have failed in most things of importance. If you are reading this, know that the greatest evil is not the evil done by wicked men, but the evil permitted by good men who lack the courage to act. I lacked that courage when it mattered. I pray you will not." The historians who found this message understood. They buried it again, sealing it back into the wall for another 100 years. It was rediscovered in 1998 and now sits in the Louisiana State Archives. But Clara's fate remains unknown. Some believe she made it to Mexico, others to Haiti. A 2006 theory suggests a woman matching her description appeared in an 1870 Illinois census under the name Clara Freeman, with a mixed-race daughter named Ruth, born in 1853. If true, then Isaiah Mercer succeeded. The rescue designed to fail, failed to fail. Duncan's trap caught nothing. But we cannot know. The historical record is fragments, a deed, a receipt, a hidden message, ambiguous census records. Perhaps the silence of history means she successfully disappeared, achieving the complete freedom so many dreamed of. Or perhaps she died alone, another casualty. The 12-cent transaction stands as a monument to that ambiguity. It was legal, witnessed, recorded. And yet it feels profoundly wrong in a way that transcends the considerable wrong of slavery itself. The deliberate devaluation of a human life. The use of bureaucracy to inflict cruelty. The participation of ordinary citizens in a transaction designed to cause suffering. Everyone involved made choices. Duncan chose revenge. William chose risk, too late. Isaiah Mercer chose redemption. Judge Crenshaw chose law over mercy. Ruth Chambers chose to use her death to help a stranger. Clara chose survival. And the 7 witnesses chose to participate in something they knew was wrong. Their signatures remain on the deed, testimony to their complicity. Their descendants tried to bury this story. But stories like this have a way of surfacing, of demanding to be told. This mystery shows us that the cruelest weapon was not the whip or the chain, but the law itself. The system that made horror legal, that allowed men to destroy lives with a signature and a handful of coins, that permitted the sale of a pregnant woman for the price of a loaf of bread, not because she was worthless, but to demonstrate that worth could be assigned or revoked at will by those in power. What do you think? Did Clara survive? Did she make it to freedom? Or did Duncan's cruelty claim her anyway? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this tale and want more horror stories like it, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share with someone who loves mysteries. See you in the next video.